how do you get turned on to a band like Slayer? Because it's not like they're getting played on the radio. I mean, 80s radio was kind of its own animal. But when it comes to bands like that, like how did you get turned on to like real metal like that? Because it's not like you heard it just by turning on the radio or MTV.
Honestly, it was pretty crazy. So at that time, my bus driver in 8th grade was a metalhead.
Nice.
And she used to let people play music. And in Franklin, where I grew up, it was a very mixed sort of like, you had black kids, you had white kids, you had preppies, you had metalheads, you had hip hop dudes, you had the full gambit, because it basically went from the edge of Princeton to the edge of New Brunswick.
Right.
So all those people in between were going to Franklin High School. So you got a full, pretty
the whole spectrum.
Mix.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And, my bus driver would let kids play music on the bus. Like everybody, you could pick a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I heard Master of Puppets on that bus.
Oh,
I heard Among the Living on that bus. But my older brother, who was into more like Sabbath and King Crimson and, Kansas and all kinds of, older, like what we consider now classic rock, but for him was just rock.
Yeah. At the time, it was just new rock, newish rock.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, he was into Zeppelin and about, big rock. And he's also into Judas Priest.
Nice.
But what he turned me onto was actually the first metal I heard was Sin After Sin, which is still my favorite Judas Priest record to this day. But he knew about WSOU, which existed at the time.
Right.
And that's where you started to be able to hear, metal on the radio locally. Like everybody used to make the cassettes, you're recording songs off the radio onto your cassettes. And I remember through meeting a couple people that were into metal, hearing South of Heaven. And I was like, South of Heaven, I got to get this record. So I went, got my mom to buy me the cassette. Shockingly enough, my mom was never like freaked out by any of the album titles, or any of that shit. She just she was like, whatever. Like I remember playing Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads tribute vinyl,
right,
in my living room. My mom was like, I like the organs. I like what's going on here. She was actually kind of into it.
She appreciated it, and that's a lot.
Yeah, she did. And I think that she always kind of made a point about listening to different music. She liked a lot of different, she liked old Motown stuff. She liked Michael Jackson. She liked Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
She was always mixing it up, listening to different kinds of music. So I feel like it benefited me because I didn't really start kind of saying like, oh, this music I shouldn't listen to this or I shouldn't listen to that, because that's not how she operated. I didn't really start hearing anything about that until I hit 8th grade or high school, because that's when people start, in your culture, start making judgments as to who you are and what you should be doing. Like black people shouldn't be listening to metal. I can't tell you how many, in 8th grade, high school, how many dudes, always saying to Byron, like, oh, you guys white, listening to white music. Right. And really you're ignorant, but well, we didn't know how to respond to that when you're 14, you know what I mean? Other than to just blow it off and do what you do.
Like I like what I like, and that's just how it is. I mean, it's interesting because it came up when I talked to Doc last year and we did the interview, and he said his perception of it was you almost caught more shit from black people than you did white people. Like white people more embracing, so to speak, whereas you got more backlash from black people for being into metal.
Also the backlash from the black people was more aggressive. You know what I mean? It's like they were making an issue of, trying to make you feel shitty about listening to this kind of music, where white people are just confused. And a lot of situations are like, man, you like Metallica? It's crazy, bro.
We're confused in most situations. But
and they were like, they were, I guess, in ways like, I mean, obviously behind closed doors, I can't tell you what anybody said.
Well,
you know what I mean? But in public, in front of my face, a lot of they were more shocked, but they were like, definitely more welcoming. But I definitely heard my fair share of shit. But there was enough people around me of different colors with the same, kind of eclectic tastes at a young age that it didn't really affect me that much. It was, and then it just kind of like when people saw that I was actually playing all the time and I started to develop some skill, people started to shut up, because that's just how it goes. People in their minds respect a winner or whatever you want to call it, somebody that's proficient at something, they're automatically start to be quiet because what can they say?
Yeah, well, that's it. You're walking the walk. You're not just like, oh, I like this stuff, but you're actually like, no, I'm into it and I can play it too. So
yeah,
who can argue with that?
I think that was also something that, you know, initially when this band came out, that I know I at least had in the back of my head, like, I don't want people thinking that, you know, this is not a real metal band. Like I was like, that was heavily kind of like a chip on my shoulder, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always thinking about like, we need to make this shit heavy. We need to make it this kind of like, you know, this kind of crazy, or, you know, people won't respect it. And,
right.
You know, and it's like, I never wanted to make, you know, a rap metal record or some shit that was, you know, some goofy ass,
some gimmicky kind of, yeah,
some gimmicky, goofy ass shit. I wanted that shit to be heavy and dark and evil, and you know, I wanted to be what I consider to be real metal, which obviously evolved over time to what people consider to be real metal. Because there's a lot of things that people consider to be real metal these days that I absolutely would not consider to be real metal in any sense of the word.
Same.
But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like there was enough people around me that were cool, including my dad wasn't so much into the rock and the metal as my mom was. My dad he grew up in Alabama, like when they still called niggas to their face and shit. Like he had to go to like whites only stores. He grew up in like a peanut farm and shit. So when he heard, you know, that shit coming out of my room, he's like, what the fuck? You know, he was a little more put off by it than my mom was.
Right.
But I had enough people around me, including, you know, like my older brother, like I said, and some other people that were encouraging, and they weren't treating me shitty because I had different tastes, or,
right.
You know, and I think it's, like I said, it's also because, like, you know, my mom nurtured that. She was big about culture and taking in different things and reading poetry and, you know, knowing some shit about life, as opposed to closing yourself off to different things.